Hello and welcome back to another episode of Injustice For All MMA. My name is David, and this episode is for UFC Fight Night, Cannonier versus Strickland. A couple things I want to talk about. First, we have no robberies on the card, no injustices. We have a lot of honorable mentions we want to talk about, including the main event, which we'll get to at the very end. But I just want to talk about something that was annoying throughout the entirety of the fight, throughout the entirety of the card, really, was Dominic Cruz being a broken record throughout the entire thing. Now, I just want to make this point clear. I like Dominic Cruz. I love Dominic Cruz. I find it annoying when people always bring up his weird blunder that he had when Rose fought. I thought that's kind of unfair because it happened right after he said it. It's a little unfair. The thing with Khabib, it's a slip up. Things like that happen. This one, though, was a little annoying because it seems to be that after the commentary crew took the scoring class, they feel as though if they just say damage over and over again, that's how fights are scored, when that's really not how fights are scored. They keep saying damage, 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 when if you look at the start of the pay-per-view, at the start of a pay-per-view, they'll always tell you how it's scored. Now, you don't need the start of the pay-per-view to tell you how it's scored. It's just one avenue that tells you how it's scored. But if you actually read the rule sets, it starts off with effective striking and then effective grappling. Those are the first two criteria. The rest don't matter in this moment in time because I'm just explaining. The damage would come from the effective striking. And that seems pretty simple based off of most of the scorecards that we've all scored. But Dom not only kept repeating it, but then started making Bisping-like statements where essentially, I don't even think Bisping has made these statements before. Essentially, he was saying, there was a fight, I believe, if I can remember it correctly, it was Garcia versus Maheshate, where Maheshate cuts Garcia open. Now, if I remember correctly, this fight ended in a 30-27, so I don't even need to read off what happened, but he cut him open. I forgot what round it is. I'm assuming it's the second round. He cuts him open with an elbow, and he starts to bleed really badly. If you go back and listen, Dom is saying, hey, that's how judges score this now. And by the end of the round, he's saying, wow, did Garcia get that back? When, if you remember correctly, and I'll read off what happened in the second round. Okay, in that second round, Garcia had 3 takedowns with some ground and pound, and he outstruck Maheshate. So he's now assuming that damage is just blood, right? Everyone keeps repeating this over and over again, and it's getting to the point where that's just not how this shit is scored. So all of a sudden, he's now saying, did he get that cut back? As though that's what the judges are looking for. Forget about the 3 takedowns and ground and pound that Rafa Garcia did. No, it's the cut. It's the one cut that landed on his head that is going to determine this round. It annoyed me because he kept saying it throughout each and every single fight, and it just wasn't the case. And it was annoying. And it was super annoying. It was almost as annoying as Chris Tognoni saying, push, don't pull. Push, don't pull. Listen, I don't like when Mark Smith says don't grab the cage, except in his case, at least he's like, people are grabbing the cage. Tognoni saying push, don't pull when people are just posting. Now I'm just going into a rant. Posting. People are posting, and he's saying don't grab, push, don't pull 7 billion times to where the fighter, I think Newsom, looked up and was like, dude, I'm not, like, shut, can you be quiet? Can you chill out? Can you stop for a second? I'm not grabbing the... It's getting annoying, okay? It's getting to the point where these Get us out of the apex. That way I don't have to hear these people over and over again. That's all. Let's get to the fights. No injustices. We have honorable mentions only. Thank goodness. Thank goodness. First honorable mention is Morozov versus Newson. I had this fight 30-27 for Morozov. In the first round, it was close on strikes. It was pretty even on strikes. But then Morozov had 2 takedowns. Most of the strike. Now this, some of these, occasionally you get these weird rounds, right? In this first round, the strikes that kind of evened up to Newsome strikes, because without these takedowns, let's just say there's no takedowns, no clinch positions. Newsome wins because he was outstriking Morozov. But once Morozov gets the 2 takedowns, he does nothing with them except for he lands knees kind of against the fence, and those kind of tally up and essentially win him the round. You go to the second round. Morozov outstruck Newsome, and he got a takedown. Again, most of Morozov's strikes were the same thing in the first round, where they were mostly knees up against the fence. And then you go to the third round, where Morozov outstruck Newsome. He had 2 takedowns, and again, most of the strikes were the knees against the fence. You go to the scorecards. Mike Bell, he had a 30-27 from Morozov. Adelaide Bird and Ron McCarthy had it 29-28. They gave Journey Newsome the first round 10-9. Honorable mention to those two, because here's the thing. When I heard the scorecard, I was thinking all 3 of these rounds are essentially the same. Where Morozov, maybe except for the third round, but the first 2 rounds are essentially the same. Except for, if we're just being honest, Morozov landed more in the second round. It's weird how they score. I mean, you might as well have just given Newsome the second round if you weren't going to give him the first round. Honorable mention to both of them. Those 2 scorecards don't make any sense. We move on. Next honorable mention is Dvorak versus Kape. I had this 29-28 for Kape. I know it's Manel Kape, but I'll switch over. Manel Kape. I had this 29-28 for Kape. I had the first 2 rounds for Kape. I put a close marker on the first round. I gave the first round to Kape, but you can make a slight argument that Dvorak won the first round. I'll explain. In that first round, Dvorak outstruck Manel Kape, and he had a takedown. And then it was at the very end where Manel Kape goes for a submission. And I think, in an alternate universe, I know I'm reaching here, but in an alternate universe, if the submission the submission is in, he doesn't tap to it. But if it doesn't look as bad, in the sense of, from the angle I was looking at, because I'm watching it on television, you can't really see Dvorak's face. And so I'm assuming the judges are looking at his face and just the severity. Dvorak doesn't outstrike him enough for anyone to really definitively give him that round. But it's obvious that Manel Kape being active gave him this round. Again, I gave it to Manel Kape, but I think you can argue this for Dvorak, given that he outstruck Kape, and then all Kape did at the very end was go for that submission. In that second round, Kape outstruck Dvorak, and he dropped him. And Kape had some ground and pound when he dropped him. Dvorak also had a takedown at the very end of the round, but yeah. You go to the third round, Dvorak outstruck Kape, clear as day. It's sort of getting weird where, like, there were moments where he was landing like some heavier shots, but in totality, Dvorak outstruck Kape, and he should have won that round. We go to the judges' scorecards. Derek Clearly and Saul D'Amato had a 30-27 for Kape. Anthony Manis gave the third round to Dvorak. Honorable mention to Saul D'Amato and Cleary. I disagree with that third round. You go to the next honorable mention. It's Battle versus Fakheretdinov. Yeah, Battle versus Fakheretdinov. I had this 30-25 for Fakheretdinov. I gave a 10-8 in the first and the third round to Fakheretdinov. In the first round, Fakheretdinov had 2 takedowns with ground and pound for 4+ minutes. It's a possible 10-8. I gave it 10-8. Second round, Fakheretdinov had 2 takedowns with ground and pound, but Battle was slightly active from the bottom, hence why, no 10-8 there. There shouldn't, objectively speaking, there really shouldn't be a 10-8 there. Third round, Fakheretdinov had 3 takedowns with ground and pound. He dropped Battle. Battle was slightly active from the bottom, but it wasn't enough to, in my opinion, to take away the 10-8. Put a possible 10-8 on it. I gave it 10-8. Go to the judges' scorecards. Adelaide Bird, her scorecard reflects mine. Junichiro Kamijo, his scorecard reflects mine. And then Ron McCarthy gives it. I'm not going to give an honorable mention here because it's subjective on how you want to apply the 10-8. But Ron McCarthy has a 30-27 for Fakheretdinov. He gives no 10-8s here. That's a little surprising, but that's fine. Next honorable mention is Nurmagomedov versus Kakhramonov. This fight ended in a submission for Nurmagomedov, which is weird because when I was watching it, it looked like it was going to happen based off the fact that once he got the takedown, Kakhramonov, Nurmagomedov had him by the neck. But Kakhramonov didn't fight the hands immediately. He just kept going for his legs, and then, boom, the submission happens. Fight ended in a submission for Nurmagomedov. In the first round, I gave a 10-9 to Kakhramonov. I put a close marker on it, so again, you can argue both sides really. But I really feel as though Nurmagomedov should have got that first round. In that very first round, Kakhramonov had a takedown, and he had a little bit of ground and pound. But Nurmagomedov was much more active on the bottom. If we count the total strikes, he definitely outstruck him. He was much more active on the bottom, and he had about 2 to 3 submission attempts. And both kind of landed on each other on the feet. Objectively speaking, this should have been a Nurmagomedov round. You can kind of argue it for Kakhramonov based off of what they did on the feet. The takedown, a little bit of ground and pound he had. So both scorecards are fine, really. Judges' scorecards, Derek Clearly, Saul Diamata, and Anthony Mandis all had it 10-9 for Kakhramonov in that first round. Go to the next honorable mention. I had Matthews versus Semelsberger. I had this 29-28 for Semelsberger. I gave the first 2 rounds to Semelsberger. In that first round, Semelsberger dropped, and he outstruck Matthews, and he also had a takedown. Before the, if I remember correctly, before the drop, I want to say Matthews may have been, I'm not sure, but it was close up until Matthews gets dropped, then he essentially gets outstruck, and he also gets taken down. In that second round, Matthews outstrikes Semelsberger barely, but he gets dropped. And Matthews also had and Semelsberger also had a takedown, so that round also goes to Semelsberger. And then the third round, he gets dropped again, except this time it's a little early, and for the rest of the round, Semelsberger gets outstruck by Matthews. And Matthews also gets a takedown against Semelsberger. That, even while I was watching it, I'm like, we've seen many rounds like this. That should go to Matthews regardless, so we know who won this fight, but that should go to Matthews. You read the judges' scorecards. Mike Bell and Chris Lee had it the same way I had it, 29-28 for Semelsberger, and then Ron McCarthy, again, weirdly enough, has a 30-27 for maybe because of the last fight he had with the Patty thing. He's just like, I'm just gonna play it safe, dog. I'm not even gonna, because we're just being honest. Is the scorecard bad? you know me, I'm really militant on like certain rounds, but is it bad? No, but maybe he just didn't want to play with it. So honorable mention to Ron McCarthy for that third round. Next honorable mention, Albazi versus Costa. I got mad in my head because I'm like, Albazi won this fight by KO in the third round. But when I was watching the first round, I was thinking to myself, they better score this for Costa, right? Because I've seen a couple of these. I remember when I watched, who was it? It was Figgy versus Moreno 2. And I believe the second round should have gone to Figgy, but I think two judges gave it to Moreno, or one judge gave it. I think two judges gave it to Moreno. It was nonsense. That shouldn't have happened. And this is what this reminded me of. In that first round, it was close on the feet, very close on the feet, pretty even on the feet actually. With the edge to Costa, I give the edge to Costa because he landed the cleaner strikes. He landed the much. This isn't even like, in my view, this isn't even debatable. Where we'll get to it. Cannonier versus Strickland, where it's like they're kind of landing even on each other. I had that. So that's why I had it 10-9 in the first for Costa, and then I had it 10-9 in the second for Albazi. In the second round, though, Albazi dropped Costa, and he had some ground and pound, but Costa was pretty active on the bottom. Judges' scorecards. Okay, Mike Bell had the first two rounds for Albazi. Derek clearly had the first round for Costa, second round for Albazi. Chris Lee had the first round for Costa and the second round for Albazi. Honorable mention to Mike Bell. I don't like that first round scorecard. We go now to the main event. My scorecard is, this ended in a split decision. Cannonier won. I had this 49-46 for Strickland. I gave Strickland the first two rounds and the last two rounds, meaning I only gave Cannonier the third round. I didn't put this in the honorable mention category because I'll explain it real quick. In that first round, I believe Strickland outstruck Cannonier. Now, there are certain, when I'm watching fights, there's ebbs and flows to fights. And certain fights, when there's not like an ebb and flow per se, this one had an ebb and flow, but when there's not like an obvious like combo ebb and flow, and there's just 1 to 2 strikes at a time, you count. And I'm counting strikes. I believe Strickland outstruck Cannonier by 4 to 5 strikes in that first round. Second round, Strickland outstruck Cannonier by 3 strikes, approximately 3 strikes. Third round, Cannonier outstruck Strickland by 2 to 3 strikes. These first 3 rounds are too fucking close. Too close. I can sit confidently and say, listen, I think my scorecard is right, obviously, but I really like that first round. The second round is close. First round is close. Second round is close. Third round is close. Fourth round, this is where I'm going to disagree with anyone. Strickland outstruck Cannonier in that fourth round. In the fifth round, I think in the fourth round, they showed the strike numbers. I think midway through, and I was thinking to myself, this isn't fucking accurate, but whatever, we move on. Fifth round, Strickland also outstruck Cannonier. We go to the judges' scorecards, where apparently before I even turned off the screen, they were like, none of the judges had it. None of them had unanimous scorecards. So this is now my head is fucking pummeling. It's making no sense at all. So we got to take this one by one. Derek Cleary. He gives the first 3 rounds to Cannonier. So we're on agreement on the third round. The first 2 rounds, he gives to Cannonier. Now I will say this. There's no honorable mention to any of these guys. Well, I'll disagree with the last 2 rounds for each person, but for the first 3 rounds, I won't really disagree because when you're watching the fight, I guess this comes down to opinion, but I disagree, right? Most of the time, we give credence to the head strikes. If you remember in maybe the first couple rounds, Cannonier's leg strikes might have been the difference. But here's the thing. It's not as though he was... His leg strikes were heavy, of course. And Strickland was throwing straight shots to his head. It now becomes a which thing do you value more? And last time I checked, head strikes was more valuable. We've scored many fights where some guys just hitting the legs. I can't come up with a fight off the top of my head, but some guys hitting his legs, the other guy's hitting his head, and in the end, it was kind of universally agreed through the scorecards that yeah, they were kind of even, but he hit your head more than you hit his legs, like that kind of thing. Back to the scorecards. Derek Lewis gives the first 3 rounds to Cannonier. 4th round he gives to Strickland. I agree. Then the 5th round he gives to Cannonier. I disagree. So honorable mention to that. Whatever, you know. Go to Saul Diamond. He gives the first 3 rounds to Strickland. I agree with the first 2. I disagree with the 3rd one. 4th round he gives to Cannonier. I'm so confused. And I think the reason why he gave it to Cannonier is because there was that weird flurry. But then if you continue the 4th round, he outstrikes him. He outstrikes him. Then he gives the 5th round to Strickland. I agree. Go to the judges' score. You go to Junichiro Kamijo now. So honorable mention of what I disagree at the bottom there, but you go to Junichiro Kamijo, who gives the 3rd round to Strickland. I'm confused there again. Gives the first 2 rounds to Cannonier. I disagree, but again, these first 3 rounds are close. I can't even argue these. Actually, they're close by like 3 to 5 strikes, really. And then you have the last 2 rounds. He gives the last 2 rounds, Junichiro. He gives the last 2 rounds to Cannonier. This is what's funny. This is what's really funny about this fight that I find really interesting. When I heard it, I immediately knew because if you want to be honest, you could flip flop this like the first 2-3 rounds like Emmett versus Cater. But here's what's funny about this. I had it 49-46. So it's almost as though I'm valuing the head strikes. I'm looking at something in particular. Everyone here had it 49-46. Everyone had it 49-46. That's amazing. That's actually kind of unique how all 3 judges are like, no, one guy is winning these. Now, I'm sure they're like, this is fucking close. But the fact that all 3 of them landed in a different area is kind of unique and shows how razor close this is. But I really think Strickland should have won this fight. And, you know, it is what it is. And I know the scorecards don't really reflect how close this is because when people read a 49-46, they just think, oh my God, he dominated. But that's not just how this works. It's the first 3 rounds are so razor close. If somebody had done something big, if somebody had taken somebody down, if someone got taken down, and I know they counted a takedown in them, there was no takedown here, but if somebody had counted a takedown, we might be looking at a couple different scorecards here. So, yeah, that's all I have. This is the last card of the year. It was fun. It was good. There was a lot of good fights on here. Tsarukyan versus Ismagulov was a really nice one. Obviously, fight of the night for me is Dober Green. Green gets knocked out because he's just... that fence is, I mean... It was a great fight. What do I have to say? I'm not a fucking analyst. I'm going to just read the scorecards. Thank you for everyone who listened throughout the whole year. And hopefully we come back next year with the same thing and hopefully something a little different if I have some time to pen it in. But thank you for listening. Please subscribe. That would greatly help. And God bless.